Hi, in this video I'm going to go over how to repair a motor in a Garrard Synchro Lab turntable. So if you've got a turntable that sounds like this, hang on and we'll see what we can do to help you. So you can see the turntable's upside down and I've got it protected at this point, but before we remove it, I'm going to use a magic marker to just mark one side of the motor so that we make sure we put it back together correctly. So to get access to the armature, we're going to remove the two long screws on either side, get that outer cap off, set that aside. There'll be a ball bearing that might fall out, so make sure you find that and set that aside. We'll put that in later. But once you've got that off, you'll be able to access the armature, and you can see right away that the magnet has separated from the armature. The next step is to remove the drive pulley. And what I've done here is made a little cardboard gauge so I can make sure that we install it correctly when we put it back. So loosen up the two set screws, and in my case it required a little heat to coax that thing off of there. So with the pulley removed, you can slide the upper bearing bracket off, and then you've got the armature and of course the magnet that is detached. So before we go to the next step of gluing these things together, we want to take a few minutes to see if we can determine where these two pieces were before they came disattached. And I think if you examine the adhesive and maybe some of the markings, you'll be able to determine just one little spot that might be an indication of where they were before, because the final assembly was balanced after they were assembled. So upon close examination, I think I found a couple of marks that will give us an indication of where they were before they came apart. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the outer edge of both of the parts, because once we put the glue on there, we'll not be able to see that, and we'll then work from the outside and reassemble them. So we're going to use JB Weld to glue these two pieces together. I've got a thin layer of glue put on the armature, and then I'll set the magnet in place and then use those marks that we put on there to align the two pieces. Then I'll set this off and clamp it, and we'll let it set for 24 hours. Okay, so we're back the next day. The two pieces have been clamped for 24 hours, and we're ready to put this thing back together and give it a try. So now it's just a matter of reversing the order and putting this thing back together again. So we'll start by putting that upper bearing plate on, and then reinstalling the pulley using the gauge that I had created earlier to make sure that the pulley is in the position it was when we took it apart anyways. Might require further positioning once we get on top, pull the platter, and take a look at the idler wheel, but we'll work on that later. Pulley was being a little bit stubborn, so I used the hammer handle, the wooden handle, and just tapped on it lightly to make the final adjustments. So continuing on with the assembly, put a drop of oil on the upper bearing shaft there, and a drop of oil on the bottom of the shaft. Needed to grab that ball bearing and install that back in the bottom bearing bracket. And I used just a little touch of grease to make sure that that bearing stayed in place. So now we can put this thing back together again. We'll reinsert the armature, position the field, put the bottom bracket back on, and then screw it down, and we'll flip this thing over and give it a try here. But I've encountered this problem on probably 4 different Synchro Lab turntables. It looks like it's a common problem for those things to separate, but fortunately it's repairable, and you can put it back, glue it, and these things have functioned okay since then. So there's a lot more repair work that needs to be done on this turntable, but I did want to capture this problem with the motor and show you how I go about fixing it. So now that we've got the thing back together again, you can see that a lot of these controls are still frozen. More work to do on all that. But here I can hold the manual button down and the motor will rotate. So I'll give you a listen here. So it's back in operation, running smoothly. So thanks for watching. Hope this helps.